Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining me for another episode of the Daily Leadership Brief. Again, I am your host, Jason Safford, and we're here to talk about leadership and practices from the book Win Your Day. And this is obviously part of the Resilience Universe, which I'm delighted to launch. So, getting started. Today, we are talking about impression is the enemy. And I want to begin with a very exciting story about a young woman who provides us with everything we need to understand how impression can transform your thoughts and how you change those into the right actions. So, click step, click step. That was the sound of young Wilma Rudolph walking through her Tennessee home with a steel brace locked around her left leg. Polio had weakened her body. Doctors told her family she might never walk normally again. Everything they could see created one powerful impression: Wilma would always be limited. But Wilma and her family refused to treat that impression as a final decision. Her mother massaged her leg. Wilma practiced moving. Day after day, step after step, she created new evidence. At 12 years old, she removed the brace and began to run. At 16, she completed and competed in the Olympics. At 20, she won 3 Olympic gold medals and became the fastest woman in the world. The brace described Wilma's condition. It never decided her future. Leaders never allow what appears true today to define what becomes possible tomorrow. Impression describes, evidence decides. As always, my goal with this leadership installation is for you to stand, breathe, and become. We're going to identify one word for your intention for the day, and you're going to focus on using what you learn here to practice helping one person. So, yesterday we focused on verification and how unchecked emotions and also the reality of emotional commands can change our outcome. Today we're focused on how the truth can become observable. So when you take an action and test out anything from how you feel emotionally, you have the opportunity to observe that action and what does it actually prove. So going back to Wilma Rudolph, she was basically diagnosed with polio, and braces forced her to be in a compromised position where she could not walk normally. And doctors basically said that she would never recover. However, Wilma and her mother and sisters, basically her whole family, refused to give up on her. And it really started with Wilma's own determination. So she became the furnace of defiance. You can read more about Wilma's story in my book, Win Your Day, The Blueprint for Human Reinvention. But again, limitation was the challenge for Wilma. And that created an impression for her. And her challenge was, how does she overcome this limitation? Again, at 12 years old, she was able to take the brace off and start running. And the key behind it was her focus was just on, keep moving. So one step changed the impression, and then repetition built the evidence that she could overcome this limitation. The quote, "Move, the world will catch up," was her determination. She wasn't focused on what others predicted for her. She was focused on her own ability to create proof, and from that proof, transform how she was looked at. So again, today's enemy is impression, both based on how do others impact you with the impression they create, as well as the impressions that are false evidence appearing real in your own mind from the things that you do. So actions that you take, mistakes that you make create impressions, and those impressions don't have to be the final verdict. Going a little bit further, the idea of impression is that it gives you material. And that material could be evidence, or it simply could be data for collection in the larger scheme of things. So again, I want to put this in the context of something we all understand. When you go to the weight room to work out, and you work a particular muscle to the point of failure, the impression is that that muscle can no longer do any type of work. However, if you take a 30-second to 90-second break, what you find is that muscle is actually able to recover. Now, in terms of that particular workout, the muscle may be maxed out in terms of its strength to be able to lift the highest amount or heaviest amount of weight, but that doesn't mean that you can't continue to do repetitions, number one. And number two, over a period of weeks and months ahead, that failure actually allows your muscle to grow and to become stronger so you can do heavier weights. So again, impression is the description of a particular event. However, over time, you build evidence that transforms that impression. An important thing to think about when looking at impressions is how you test the claim, then how you take the next step, and you track the results of each action. So the evidence loop, which is a framework, again, to work through, is to focus on a particular event and observe the impression that it creates. Claim that impression and test it. Then act on the evidence that you have now tested, and then observe the evidence that you get from that action. So again, the loop is something where we're trying to break free from false impressions and impressions that don't give us the result that we're looking for by testing based on impressions. Okay. The algorithm I want you to learn from today in terms of looking at how you work through impressions is to pinpoint the claim. This is the P.R.O.V.E. method. You're going to pinpoint the claim. You're going to run the next step. You're going to observe the result from that step, verify exactly what happened, continue, and then move forward with the next execution. That is the P.R.O.V.E. method. In thinking about your own operation, both for yourself personally and your work, think about how impression is preventing you or distracting you from making good decisions. Think about what are you accepting as impressions and what small tests will allow you to break free from those impressions and then make better determinations. At the end of the day, your goal is to recognize how impressions distract us and divert our attention away from our real focus and our real goals. Now, in terms of your team, what can your team prove before the day ends? Think about it in terms of discussion, sharing a practice, listening for a tool from your team, and again, encouraging one of them to become a leader or be a leader that helps your overall organization. And using the idea of impression, how do they transform impressions into better results? So your daily commitment is that you're going to run one small test today before 3 p.m. Your goal is to actually post the result from this test and then share the results, not only posting it online, but sharing it with your team and seeing how they react and the impression it gives them in terms of this test. Again, as always, we're setting the intention for today with one word. My word today is prove. So write yours, post it online, say it, become it, reflect on it, use it with your team. Knowledge, again, is the beginning point of leadership. And then we practice on that knowledge. We define our identity, and that is how we step forward as leaders. So your practice as a leadership always begins with the knowledge that you have and how you practice on that knowledge. Yesterday, we learned about Muhammad Ali and how you form an identity from that practice. Today, with impression, your goal is to step forward as an evidence-led leader. Repetition is the mother of mastery. So consistency is what we're looking for. It's not about jumping out there and doing something with a high amount of intensity once. Again, if you go to the gym and you work out with incredible intensity and you never come back, you will not get a result other than you're sore. But if you work consistently and with consistency over time, you will see those results more effectively. The evidence stacks up. So again, I want to thank everyone for tuning in today. And it's my pleasure always to serve you as the Resilience Architect. My name is Jason Safford. You can find out more about the Resilience Circle at theresilienceuniverse.com. More about the book Win Your Day at winyourdaybook.com. And again, you can contact me at jasonsafford@gmail.com. As always, go out there and win your day. Thank you.